お前はもう死んでいる。何？
Hello everyone, welcome back to Ghostly French Toast, and today we're doing a lore video on Nameless King and the Path of the Dragons. And sorry if I sound a little under the weather, because I am. So enough dawdling around, let's dive on in. The war with the ancient dragons and the lords found the power to become lords in the fire. A new kingdom, a new world was established where the dragons had to retreat, and like they never had before because they never feared death. But now they're a crumbling civilization. And now humanity took over and the gods ruled over. And it was a prospering era until the fire started to fade. But we're not going to talk about that. We have to talk to basically understand Gwen. We have to understand why and what Gwen did to try to preserve his land. After his first child, the Nameless King was the god of war, and he went around the lands blessing his armor, blessing armor from the Ferosan Knights. We read that in the Ferosan Knights helm description, and in the helm description we see the helm itself. We see a knight fighting a dragon. We can presume that to be the Nameless King himself. One of his first daughters, Gwen's first daughter, Guinevere, was basically to soothe the war, soothe people after the war, because the war left basically a scar on Lordran and the world as a whole. So that's what Guinevere was supposed to do, supposed to calm everything down and bring like a peaceful opening into the world, to say. And Gwen's what I think, his most powerful tool, Filianor. Filianor was basically put to sleep, so she would basically make sure Gwen's world didn't disappear and fall to the dark. So Gwen basically rigged the world in his favor to basically keep it going as long as he can. Back to the Nameless King himself, we see that he carries this crossbear, and this crossbear inspired one of his knights, Ornstein, to adapt his crossbear. And we know that the crossbear is good at basically piercing dragon hide, because the tip would basically impale it. And we kind of get that idea with the four knights. We see that Ornstein has a crossbear as well. So I was just thinking that Ornstein would basically use the crossbear, and it would basically leave a hole for everyone else, like Hawkwood, to basically shoot all that, his arrows into the dragon. Sacred Oath is a miracle that's comprised by Ornstein, the Nameless King, and one of his fellow battle compatriots, Havel the Rock. And Havel the Rock is basically a knight who basically hates dragons, and he took what the dragons had and used it against him by making an armor out of rock. And we also see that Nameless King also did that as well. He has dragon scales that are basically impervious to fire, and we see that that's the best weapon against the dragons. Something important to note about the Nameless King is we tell by his actions later on, he wants the world, he doesn't care about how the world works, how the world is right now, he just wants the world to go on normally. And we see that in his actions later. As the fire began to fade, the gods became desperate, and we know that Isolith, in my last video, we talked about Isolith and all how she basically sacrificed herself for the flame. We see that Gwen got desperate, and he threw himself into the fire to basically keep the Age of Fire going. But here's the problem. Before that, the Nameless King left. The reason was because he didn't like how the world was going. Gwen was basically going against nature. And that we see that Karth, Dark Lord Karth, whatever his name is, sorry, it's way too early for this. He's basically trying to stop Gwen's defiance of nature and how humanity should be taking over the world, all that kind of stuff. The Nameless King sided with the dragons, and that made Gwen very furious because anyone that went against Gwen was an enemy of Gwen. All statues were torn down of Gwen, of Nameless King. But there's still hope. There's still basically still like hope that Nameless King, and we see that with Ornstein. But we'll talk about that later. Ornstein and the Path of the Dragons. Nameless King. He went and sided with the dragons in Archdragon Peak. We see that he went across the lands, and we see the path that he left with him. We see that I have a theory. I'm going to do a whole different video about the Dragon Slayer, the old Dragon Slayer, and how that connects to Ornstein. Alright, so Nameless King went to Archdragon Peak, and he made an alliance with the serpents, who basically were just living there in peace. And that's basically everything that we know to Nameless King. But there's a whole lot more. I'm actually thinking of making this a two-parter episode, but I'm going to talk about a little more about Ornstein himself. Ornstein basically left the cathedral after the ONS fight, and Smo was left on duty surprisingly when Ornstein left the cathedral. And sorry for the weird cutout right there, my phone actually powered off when I was doing the voiceover for this, sorry. Ornstein left the cathedral, and Smo was basically the last remaining knight. And when Aldrich came around, it's kind of ironic to say, because after defeating Aldrich in Dark Souls 3, we get Smo's armor set, basically implying that Smo was cannibalized by Aldrich. I think that's kind of funny, to be honest with you. And I'm just going to do a brief overview, but I'm going to go more into depth, my personal theory. Ornstein basically traveled to do the Path of the Dragon, to get to Nameless King, because he still had hope. He still respected Nameless King. Because, after all, Ornstein was the Nameless King's knight. So, my personal theory is the old Dragon Slayer is Ornstein. Because we know that time passed a lot, and we see the wear and tear on the old Dragon Slayer's armor. Because if you look at gold itself, this isn't in Dark Souls itself, but if you look at gold over time, it slowly loses its color. It doesn't stay gold the entire time. And if we look at the old Dragon Slayer's armor, we see that. But I know there's some things to go against that. If you look at the old Dragon Slayer armor in Dark Souls 3, it still has its gold color. So there's some flaws, but I personally believe that that's the old Dragon Slayer. Ornstein is the old Dragon Slayer. And it's the old Dragon Slayer. And we know that there was other Dragon Slayer armors. We know that there was the Dragon Slayer armor in Dark Souls 3, and that was the main defense in Lothric, as I went in my war with the Lothric and Luring City. So hopefully you enjoyed this, I have something else, gosh. And we know Ornstein's armor is one of a kind, so I'm personally saying that is Ornstein. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, and check out my Twitch, because I'm almost done with Dark Souls Remastered. So hopefully you guys want to check that out. That's really cool. And see you next time. Ghostly French Toast. Happy New Year. Thank you for all the support. It means a lot. We're so close to 150, guys. We got this. I'm really happy that you guys are really enjoying the videos. I love making these. Sorry if this one's a little later in the day. It's just been a long week to say. And thank you. See you next time. Ghostly French Toast. Bye.